And isn't he beautiful? Tucked in the morning light.
You can see his whisker pattern, quite nice.
So, just while we're having a look at that wonderful whisker pattern, that is a pattern that... So, just while we're having a look at that wonderful whisker pattern, that is a pattern that he will keep for the rest of his life, and it is one key way of identifying individuals. And he does look very, very peaceful. Tucked up and just gone to sleep. And I do wonder what goes through a leopard's head, that he was on such a mission this morning when he was first called in. And if he'd done it 20 meters further to the west of us, we wouldn't be seeing him. Around. And the size difference between him and Karula, and for those of you who might have missed the last few safaris, we did have a great time with Karula yesterday morning on a Steenbok kill that she finished from start to finish in probably something around an hour, but maybe even less, and all that was left was the jawbones. So we had Karula yesterday morning, and now seeing Tingana this morning, there is a serious difference. Retracted now, but ready to come out when necessary. And they keep them, you can just see one claw peeking through there. And that's important for leopards and lions to have these claws retracted, because they need... That's more than anything else, that's to keep the claws clean and sharp and to remove any sort of dead skin cells or stuff that they've picked up from the ground, and just keep them ready to use. Because the way that the claws are tucked into that sheath, there's a sort of a cartilage sheath that surrounds them, and they slide in and out of that. And if they let too much dirt or anything gather around them, then they might have difficulty getting the claws out. And they are controlled by really powerful tendons that run all the way up the back of the leg. So they can use them to extract those claws when they're hunting something, to grip it, and then when they need to climb a tree, especially in the case of leopards, to drag their kill up and tuck it away in the branches of a tree. Excuse me. He is truly spectacular. Just look at that neck. There's sheer power there. So we spoke a little bit earlier about the whisker pattern and the spot pattern, and I'm just at the moment taking it all in and having a look at this beautiful leopard in front of me. But Bob was sort of like to know if I could describe his identifying features for the new viewers, and I'm actually going I'm going to put that question to the regular viewers. If you can tell me a little bit about what you find to be his identifying spot patterns and features on this leopard. I'm going to just sit and have a look with my binoculars. Unfortunately, I don't have a monitor at the moment, so I can't see as clearly, potentially. That was terribly inconvenient timing, Tingana. I was trying to look at your face, and now I've got your forehead, which will do, but it's not ideal. So yeah, if you have any information for me and for Bob about Tingana's identifying patterns, please let me know. You can do that on hashtag SafariLive on Twitter, or to questions@wildearth.tv. And my personal approach when I'm looking at IDing leopards is obviously both the spot pattern, but then I also look for sort of joined up and oddly shaped spots. And I can't see a good example on him at the moment, but I'm sure if he lifts up his head, we'd see it fairly clearly. Just highlighting that really important part of the body that can communicate so much in terms of visual cues. And overall, just the most amazing animal. So you can see as we've done this wonderful tour of Tingana's body, the amazing contrast between that gorgeous caramel color, almost pale gold, the color of his forehead, and then the white of his belly and the big dark spots underneath it. Those spot patterns so important in disrupting the shape of his body and just highlighting, and just not highlighting, hiding the fact that a leopard is moving through the grass and through the bushes. And that's so important for a solitary hunter that relies as heavily on stealth as these guys do. If you guys were hearing all of the bird activity that made him lift his head like that, there was a bird of prey that was going after a francolin. That was what was screeching like that. And the go-away birds are just responding. So he lifted his head up just to have a listen to what was going on there. And he is otherwise very, very relaxed, sleeping up against this termite mound. And Tina has put forward a question saying that she thought that leopards usually sleep in trees, and she hasn't had that many sightings of them sleeping on the ground. And I have to confess that mine is the opposite. I have seen more leopards sleeping on the ground than sleeping in trees, which does seem to be quite curious, but that's just been my experience. They do, of course, move into the safety of the big trees and sleep there. And the area that I'm in at the moment, there aren't that many, although I have just come from a drainage line, but there's not that many large trees for him to rest in. But he is so big and fairly secure and comfortable in his position here. We're just trying to remove half of the thorn tree that we have acquired in the car.
But he's looking at me funny.
Yeah, he is looking at you funny. we might have to wait for that particular exercise. Poor Andrew has to sort of scoot around and try and dodge the thorn branches that have landed in the car. But yes, he is fast asleep on a termite mound. Tina, in my experience, the leopard sightings that I've had have probably been close to a split of 75 to 25%, with the majority being on the ground. And they do sleep quite happily on the ground. They are just very, very alert when they do so. So you can see, as we watch him sleep, he's flicking his ears to get rid of the flies, but he is also directing them in terms of still listening to sound, even in the depths of sleep. And often when you do find leopards sleeping in trees, it's because they have a kill hoisted up into the branches. So I have seen both, but just in my experience, I've seen a lot of leopards, particularly in the Sabi Sands area, sleeping on the ground. And whenever I've encountered Sindile or Shadow, they've both been on the ground asleep. So not unheard of and not that uncommon. I can't believe the contrast between us rushing here because he was on a serious mission, and when I first pulled into the sighting, it looked like we were going to lose him in about 2 seconds. And the fact that he is now completely flat cat on the termite mound. So guys, we were chatting a little bit about Tingana's identifying features, and so many of you have responded with the information that we need in terms of sending through pictures, and I will hop on Twitter the minute I get back to camp this morning and have a proper look at the various highlighting features. I have a slightly better view of him now, so I'm just going to pop my binos back up again. I'm fairly new to the area. Less new than I was 2 weeks ago, but still new, and still getting to know the animals. So this is my first time seeing Tingana, so I'm very, very excited. It's also the first large male that I've seen on the Sabi Sands, and he is a truly impressive specimen. I don't know where that hyena went, but I think he made a very prudent decision. So in terms of charging speeds, if Tingana had wanted to chase after that hyena, leopards have one of the fastest, in fact the fastest of any of the really dangerous animals that we get out here. So this guy could cover 22 meters in a second at full speed, which is unimaginably fast. I can hear elephants. If a herd of elephants came past. I'm very curious to see what happens if this elephant herd was to come in this direction. Now, typically, Elephants tend to be fairly bad-tempered towards leopards and lions, and they can often and will chase them if they can. And I know that some of you will have heard about or have seen the incident with Karula many years ago, being chased by a female elephant that was very grumpy with her presence. And I actually had it happen to me last year. We were doing research on a pride of lions, and we fed them every day. Twice a day we would sit with them. And for the research purposes, the absolute minimum period that we spent with them in order for a research session to count was an hour. And we spent about 5 hours tracking this particular pride. And they did tend to decide to motor sort of 5 kilometers in a night, and we'd have to go and relocate them. So we spent about maybe 6 hours that morning looking for them, finally found them in the river, and sat down for a nice relaxed research session, just observing their behavior and the various movements that they did. And about 45 minutes into that, a young bull elephant came down to have a drink and saw this entire pride of lions and just charged straight into the middle of it. And the lions are fairly relaxed in response. They know that they can outmaneuver an elephant, but they did sort of scatter off in different directions, and that put an end to our research session. It was amazing to watch, but it did mean an extra couple of hours work trying to find the lions again, and unfortunately a completely discounted session with them. And for those of you who are wondering about the lions in the area, I will be following up with that at some point. I know we are very, very close to where you were with James yesterday afternoon on the sunset safari with that mating pair of them, timber male, hairy belly, I think, and the Styx female member. So after we are finished here, then I will definitely go and see what they've been up to. Well, I know what they've been up to, but we'll go and see if we can find them again. So I've actually just been sitting here having a look at this seriously impressive male leopard, and Lisa G has also read my mind. She was wondering how much I think he weighs, and I'm still trying to work this one out. I would say he's well or so kilograms. He is a seriously impressive male, big neck, and I must actually double check. If you bear with me 1 second, I just want to see what the weight record is for a male leopard. He isn't the biggest I've ever seen, but he is fairly large. So I just want to grab my book and have a look at what the heaviest leopard is that has been recorded. Okay, so my estimation might have been a bit large. There's around a maximum of just over 90 kilograms, but an average of sort of between 60 to 70 kilograms. So 70 kilograms, what is that in pounds? It's about 150-ish, 150 odd pounds. You'll have to forgive my conversions. but some serious muscle. These creatures are unbelievably powerful. When you think of their ability to drag a carcass that weighs anywhere from 40 to 60 kilograms up a tree, and there are cases of male leopards dragging small giraffe up trees. They do that with just their mouths and then climbing up with their claws. It's totally mind-blowing when you think about it. And in the background I can hear some fairly confused impala who are still making their rutting sounds, even though we are now well out of the mating season. But I think that the hormones stick around for a little bit and still run a bit high for a couple of months after the breeding season, and they're still making their funny grunting, groaning sounds that they do as the males chase each other around. So while we're looking at those dark, solid spots around inside our belly part of his body, was one Tingana doesn't seem to have rosettes, because isn't that one of the main differences between cheetah and leopard? And that is true. Cheetah have soft spots and leopards have rosettes. It is just the angle that he's lying at. The belly part of his body